The topic that I will present you in this speech are relating to the environmental footprint methods. I will first start with a quick introduction on the state of the planet and the role of life cycle assessment. But then I will move gradually towards LCA, the environmental footprint methods, also showing which are some of the current or expected use of the methods at policy level. And then I will provide finally an outlook for the future before jumping to the conclusions. Let's start. So, unfortunately, we live in a very critical period. We have wars next doors. We have some important economic issues at European and global level. We have a lot of attention on competitiveness of industry, but we don't have also to forget that we have a big environmental crisis. It's not an environmental crisis of one dimension. It's a crisis that touches different aspects. This is the analysis that the Stockholm Resilience Center does periodically about the planetary boundaries, so what we do as human beings in terms of environmental performance against these limits that the Earth imposed to us. And as you can see from these graphs, we have been crossing the limit of our planet along the time. So now in 2023, so last year, we crossed 6 of the 9 boundaries that were assessed. So it is a very urgent and important issue to tackle also the environmental crisis. I think that we all agree here, but we need also to reach out also to those who doesn't want to listen about this urgency. What is the big problem? The elephant in the room is that we have an not sustainable production and consumption system. I like a lot this formula, that is the iPad formula. I don't know if you are familiar with, but it's a very simple way to describe which are the environmental impacts at the global level. And these are the combination of 3 factors: the population, the affluence, that is the consumption, and then the technologies that we use. So what is been happening at global level is that population has increased, the lifestyle has been increasing, as necessarily must be in all the world, and then we also are acting a bit at the technological level to limit those impacts. This is well reflected here. These are not my slides. This comes from a presentation of Hans Rosling, now passed away, but he was, if you are not aware, if you don't know him, he was a very important statistician from Sweden who made all his career working on this issue. And I would like to invite you in your free time to have a look to this video about the magic washing machine, because it's very educational and very, very interesting. If we want to convert this in other terms, basically what we have is that the impact are the result of what we consume as human beings, of how much we consume, and then how we make the things that we use. In this equation, simple with 3 terms, but really much more complex in the practice, LCA can play a very important role. What is the role of LCA? LCA is a tool that can be used to assess the hotspot along the value chain of products, or also across different value chains, and then it can be used to reduce these impacts and to analyze if there are trade-offs among impacts or stages along the value chain. The issues that the LCA, it mainly address a relative improvement along the value chain. So as such, is not addressing the other 2 parts of the equation that are what we use and how much. And that is inherently connected to the carrying capacity of the planet, so the planetary boundaries, and then the safe operating space that are allocated to the different activities. The good thing is that anyhow, these two pillars that seems totally disconnected can be put together. And there was an effort in the last year, and there is still an effort right now. There were also presentations by many scientists today at this conference about how to connect life cycle assessment and planetary boundary to address the impacts at global level in a holistic way. There are two main strategies. One is to include, to develop life cycle impact assessment metrics based on the planetary boundaries. And the other one is instead to connect the conventional life cycle impact assessment methods to the planetary boundaries. But I will not enter into these details. I leave it to you that I've been presented today to speak about this. I think that what I want to underline that we can only agree that life cycle assessment is a very powerful tool. But with power comes also some limitation that we have in LCA. So you can see the picture here. This is a pista. If you are Italian, it's not only a pista, because for the Italians, I'm Italian, so for Italians, we know that every pista is different from another pista. You can have different recipes, you can have different ingredients, different pista makers, different ovens used to make the pista, so not all the pista are the same. You can imagine that the same applies to LCA. So LCA is well standardized by ISO 1440 and 44, but the standard is too generic. So it leaves many margins of assumption to the practitioners. And this results that it cannot be directly used for policy-making purposes or even for comparing different products on the market. So it is very likely that if all of us in this room makes a life cycle assessment of the same pista, we will yield different results. Why? Because we can use different impact assessment methods, we can use different modeling rules and assumptions, different data, and different way to interpret the results. What does this mean? It means that we need harmonization. And here is where PEF plays to come a role. So the Commission has developed the environmental footprint methods. So PEF is the most famous product environmental footprint, but the little sister is the organizational environmental footprint, that is OEF. So the two methods together are created to assess and communicate in an harmonious way the impacts of products and organizations respectively. How they are used? The most famous use of PEF and OEF is to use them for comparative assessment. So I communicate the results of my product or my company, and I compare the results with the other competitors. And this is also a very popular use because it was well reflected in the European Green Deal and then also in the Circular Economy Action Plan that we need to have reliable and comparable information based on these tools. But in reality, the power of PEF and OEF goes much beyond the use for comparative assertions. It can be used to support more in general the policy-making process. I have one slide later in this presentation about this. And we should not forget that the most valuable use of LCA is for internal purposes. Either if it comes by an organization or a research project, the key use of LCA and then EF methods is to promote a reduction of the impacts. So what is the value that PEF and OEF add to the LCA framework? First, they come with harmonized assumption that can then help to support the implementation of LCA on the ground. They promote reliability of information, and this can be used to tackle greenwashing. They also set a level playing field for companies, and this is a key issue that we heard in several occasions in this conference about the need to have harmonization and a level playing field, and this is possible with PEF and OEF. And last but not least, it also had an element of transparency and engagement with the key stakeholders, and the possibility to verify the information that is provided with the PEF and OEF, and this adds credibility to the tool. So in this slide, I summarize what is then how PEF and OEF can be seen in the context of LCA and EU policy. So at the basis of this pyramid, you see that there is the ISO 14444 standard, because everybody doing an LCA must refer to that. PEF narrowed down the methodological assumption for the benefit of comparability and reliability. But PEF and OEF alone are not sufficient, because in order to address the specificities of sectors, one may need to develop sectoral rules. So we have the product environmental footprint category rules, mirroring what is done by EPD International, for instance. And we have OEFSR rules that are organizational environmental footprint sectoral rules. So these are rules for specific sector developed by industry, in some cases with participation of the Commission, and are done to ensure a level playing field in that sector, and also possibly with the coherence with the other sectors. And building on that, and this was very recent in the last years, there is the possibility to transform the PFCRs or PEF rules into legislation. One example is the carbon footprint of batteries that rely on the PFCR that was developed for batteries in the pilot phase of the PEF. So the legislator, so the European Commission, is moving towards the transformation of LCA in formal rules for policies. And of course, the upper you go in this pyramid, the less variability you need to have in terms of methodological assumption and data, because we must ensure that results are reliable and meaningful. Now, the PEF is not a baby, is an entity that has, I would say, more than 20 years of life. If we consider that there was preliminary work at the beginning of 2000 on the ILCD handbook. So that was work done by the JRC of the European Commission. So based on that work, there was the first generation of the recommendation on the AF methods that was published in 2013. And at the same time, there was also the start of the pilot phase. So the testing of the AF methods on the ground. During this testing that was lasting until 2019, we published 21 sectoral rules, together with the participation of 300 organizations and more than 3,000 stakeholders. So it was a big activity from European Commission and scientific side. Then in 2019, there was the start of the so-called transition phase, which is still ongoing. And during this transition phase, the methodological reference building upon the results of the pilot phase become a new recommendation, the recommendation 2021-2279 of the European Union. And during the transition phase, what we are doing is to set the ground for mainstreaming the use of PEF in policies and the market application. We are monitoring and developing new PFCRs. We are also doing some methodological work and work at the level of data. I will speak about this later. And we are also carefully ensuring that we also outreach all the relevant stakeholders and review the governance in a way that can be meaningful and allow participation of all the key players. This is the state of play in terms of the product environmental footprint category rules that are at the moment ongoing. I have split this in different categories. I will explain what this means. So We have the one that goes from we have 14 product environmental footprint category rules on which we are formally working. So this follows the rules of PEF in a rigorous way. We have 4 of them that are the result of a public call that was launched at the beginning of the transition phase. And this includes apparel and footwear, marine fish, synthetic turf, and cut flowers and potted plants, with the last 2 that has been already completed, and the first 2 are about to be completed. Then we had also 7 PFCRs that comes from the pilot phase and are being updated to align with the methodological and data requirements of PEF. These are batteries, beer, copper production that has been completed, dairy products, feed, pasta, and pet food. And all of these are expected to be completed either by the end of the year or beginning of next year. We have also other 3 PFCR that respond to policy needs of the Commission. So we have a PFCR for aircraft, drones, and vertical taking off and landing vehicles that is developed by EASA. We have 1 PFCR for space activities developed by DG DEFIS, and 1 PFCR for tourism developed by GROW. So as you can see, the novelty is that this work is expanding from DG Environment also and the GRC also to other directorates of the Commission, just to highlight the importance of LCA for us. Apart from this PFCR that follow a formal track, we also have the so-called shadow PFCR. What does shadow PFCR mean? So these are product environmental footprint category rules that are developed in an autonomous way by industry, because they have interest in harmonize the sector, but for different reasons, we cannot formalize them in our work streams. In this case, they take the PEF as a key methodological reference, but also they can introduce some deviation, because in this case, at the moment, there is no formal obligation from their side to follow all the rules of PEF. But still, we think that these are a very valuable resource. And what we are considering for the future is to see how they can be put into a formal track. We are still discussing how this can be done in an efficient way, but that is the plan for the future, because are a valuable resource for not only for the market, but also for our work in different pieces of legislation. I think that this is also an important clarification that I must make about the governance of the EF methods, because it's something that is not fully clear to everybody. So at the center, at the heart of the work on the environmental footprint methods, you have, of course, the Commission. So we are the guardian of the method. And the key players here are DG Environment, the directory for which I work. And we are on the lead of methodological development and then promoting the implementation of the EF methods. We do this hand in hand with the GRC. So the GRC is responsible for then addressing the methodological needs that we identified. And all together, then we develop the rules, we support the implementation, and we also do this together with the other services of the Commission that have a final say on the work that we do. We do this also with the support of 2 expert groups. One is the Technical Advisory Board, and the other one is the Steering Group. And these 2 expert groups of the Commission are very, very important bodies, because they provide technical and policy advice on what we do in the field of environmental footprint methods. There has been recently a call to update of the Technical Advisory Board. I will speak about that later. But for you, mainly, it is important to focus on the technical advisory board because this is a group of high-level scientists that help us in the work that we do on PEF. The steering group is mainly represented by member state authority because it has more an influence or a say at the level of political guidance. We also have the technical secretariats. The technical secretariats are the body that basically make the hard work for the development of the product environmental footprint category rules, or the OEFCR for the organization. And basically, they manage this project and ensure that it is developed according to the rules of the EF methods. We also have stakeholders, so who is not part of the technical advisory board can still be a stakeholder. And the stakeholder, what they do, apart from following what is ongoing in PEF, they can also comment on key methodological issue when there is the opportunity, or provide input for public consultations relating to the PFCR and the OEFCRs under development. And last but not least, we also have an help desk that provides us with technical support, sometimes to address questions or other activities that we need for the maintenance of the EF methods. Now, I think that this, for many of you, will be one of the most important parts of my presentation, is the use of the EF methods in policy. So as you see from this slide, this graph shows how frequently LCA and/or EF methods have been used in policies. You can see that there was a gradual uptake of LCA along the years, but there was a big boom in 2019. What happened in 2019? There was the European Green Deal that was published, and this was the big incentive for the spreading the use of LCA in policies. As you can see, the use has exponentially increased in the last years. And my estimation is that at least it will continue in this level. We also have experienced an increased use of application of environmental footprint methods at country level in Europe. We have the example of Italy with Made Green in Italy, or we have the example of France, where there are labeling schemes that are developed building on PEF. So you will understand that it is quite an active period for LCA, and one of the priorities is to ensure policy coherence in the use of LCA, and also harmonization as far as possible. So how LCA can be used? So there are different, I don't know how much familiar are you with the policy cycle in the European Commission, but there are different phases of the policy cycle. So usually first you have anticipatory definition of the problems, and then you start to develop policies, you implement the policy, you have also stages in which an impact assessment or an evaluation is needed, and LCA can be used in all of these stages. I will show you now some example of policy implementation, because I think that this is the most interesting application, because it means when really LCA it is used not for a research study supporting a policy, but when LCA is used on the ground on the market. You see here that, let's say, two main categories: carbon footprint and environmental footprint. In the last years, there was a start in using PEF for carbon footprint tools. The first example is the battery regulation, where there is under discussion a delegated act for the carbon footprint of batteries, which builds on PEF and the PEF category rules that were developed for this product group. And the same is done in the context of eco-design for photovoltaic panels. So there, also in that case, so these are two projects that goes hands in hands. And also in the case of a photovoltaic system, there was a PFCR study done during the pilot, and this has been used as a basis to make a legislation. So PEF translated into legislation. And here we are at the final steps of the policy cycle. Building on that, there is also discussion ongoing for the use of PEF for the Net Zero Industry Act, and also for end of life of vehicles. So carbon footprint applied to energy producing technology based on renewables, and also on the automotive vehicles. But this is the carbon footprint. Then we have the Critical Raw Material Act, where there has been quite an important innovation, because we are passing from the focus on the carbon footprint only to other environmental aspects. So we will be developing in the next years environmental footprint rules for critical raw material that are used in Europe. And the use of the environmental footprint methods is also acknowledged through the Green Claim Directive proposal to substantiate the green claims made by company. And there is also the possibility by the Commission to, again, to transform PFCRs into delegated acts, so into legislation to be used on the market. Environmental footprint is also used in the initiative for safe and sustainable by design of chemicals and materials. And it is also the underneath method of the consumption footprint that is used as an indicator in the circular economy monitoring framework. And now we go into the center. The center, you have the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation that you are all aware of course. So this is basically the extension of the Eco Design Directive beyond the energy efficiency aspect to tackle the circularity of the products and the key environmental impacts. In this case, there is the possibility to have a performance requirement and information requirement, and LCA play a key role. LCA can be used either based on the Eco Report tool, that is a simplified LCA method, but aligned with the PEF, or more extensive PEF studies can be used or have been used for the prioritization exercise in this policy context, for the identification of the key criteria areas for a specific product group, and then also for the definition of environmental declaration in case the legislation decide to put a requirement in this sense. In the context of ESPR, we are also working on a product carbon footprint method that will aim to align what is done in ETS and CBAM and PEF. Mirroring the ESPR, we also have the construction products. In the construction product, the key regulation is the construction product regulation. In this case, the reference is not PEF, is the EN 15804. But we are in close communication with the colleagues working on that to promote further harmonization between the two tools. The EN 15804, for your knowledge, is aligning to partly to an old version, to the previous version of the PEF. And in the next years, we can foresee that there will be an increased harmonization. And then last but not least here in this slide, taxonomy and CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, where LCA and environmental footprint methods can be used for materiality assessment and also play a key role in the climate change impacts of the different activities that are in the scope of these two legislations. Now, what to expect for the future? What you see in these slides are the key priorities for our work in the next months and years. So the transition period, the transition phase that started in 2019 is expected to be concluded next year. What will happen in the next year and in the next years? So we will have, first of all, methodological developments to fulfill our policy needs. We will do that pursuing harmonization, for example, in the level of the carbon footprint, and also we aim to streamline the implementation of the EF methods. So this is what will happen. We will have a revised recommendation next year, and the recommendation will address the text of the method, the procedure to develop PFCRs, and the methods themselves. We will also have work on the database for the AF methods. We will review the governance, for instance, updating the tab, and you are invited to apply for the renewal of the tab. And also we will finalize the work on the PFCRs, also providing more planning certainty for the future, and supporting the application of the AF methods in different policies of the European Union. In terms of methodological developments, you know that the PEF has 16 impact categories, midpoint indicators in our case, and then these are normalized, weighted, aggregated into a single score, and there is the possibility to have additional environmental information. What we are doing based on scientific progress, our experience in the application, and also input that we receive from the expert of the tab, but also stakeholders, we are reviewing a part of this aspect. So first of all, we are revising some of the midpoint impact categories to improve them, like water scarcity, soil quality, or toxicity. We also have added a new impact category for biodiversity impacts to the land use based on the LANCA model. We are, due to this introduction of a 17th impact category, we are adjusting also normalization, weighting, and aggregation steps. We will have a two-step aggregations, first at the level of area protection and then single score. We also are addressing some of the concerns that were raised in the Green Claim Directive proposal. So namely, addressing, for instance, the impact of microplastics or fish stock depletion, and this will likely be added as additional information. We're also reviewing the biogenic carbon approach of PEF, and we are moving toward a -1+1 approach. It is called hybrid approach because it builds on a 0-0 database, but with the possibility to correct the results when it makes sense for bio-based product. We are also clarifying and providing some simplification for the end-of-life modeling, the circular footprint formula, and also to address in a more coherent way circularity aspect in the AF method. We have enhanced modeling rules, mainly at the level of agri-food system, and also aiming to integrate non-LCA information. And finally, we are also working on the data quality rating, reviewing it. The coupling is dependent from the single score. Then I'm jumping towards the end of my presentation, also the time is running. So I want to mention that last week there was a milestone at the level of the development of the EF 4.0 database. We meet the European Commission, DG Environment, and RTD met with the consortium working on the EF 4.0 database. You can see here there is a post in LinkedIn. So basically what we are doing is to develop a new database where we, the Commission, are the owner of the IP rights. So this means that what we want to do is to ease access to the LCA datasets to mainstream the use of the EF methods and LCA on the ground. We are working on the development of EF compliant datasets for generic datasets for some sector along the value chain. And also, we think that this will be a major intervention to support small, medium enterprises. So here you see the timeline. So the project aims to be concluded by the end of 2026. And for sure, it will be a breakthrough innovation in the field of LCA to mainstream its use. I'm now at the conclusion. I hope to be on time. And I want to leave you with some messages that I hope that you will bring home. So first of all, we can expect that the use of LCA and EF methods in policy and market application has increased, but can be considered to increase also in the future. The EF methods is a a robust, harmonized method to be used for the carbon and the environmental footprint of products and organizations. We also take care of updating methods, data, and the tools, the 3 ingredients to make a good LCA periodically. And we do this in order to promote harmonization and policy coherence, also following the latest scientific development, but also we take care of keeping things operational. So we need to have things that are not too complex, otherwise they will not be used on the ground. And the last point is on the transparency and the engagement, because I think that this is a strength of our work. We don't want to do it in a silos. We want to do it with all the key experts, because we think that this adds credibility, but also because we cannot do it alone. It was mentioned yesterday, a problem of resources, and we all care for our environment, and we all need to join forces to go towards the same goal. And then with this, I conclude my presentation, invite you to apply for this continuous open call where we look for experts on a voluntary basis, I must say, to help us developing and implementing the PEF methods and develop methodological rules and the data that we need for having LCA success in the ground. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.